Somewhere in the 1970s, a grown man looked at a beanbag frog in a toy store and thought, this little guy could save America's children from becoming emotionally unstable gremlins. Not a math game, not a phonics workbook, not one of those terrifying educational computer programs from the 90s where a cartoon rabbit yells at you because you clicked the wrong vowel. A beanbag frog. And from that frog came a full musical universe, where a tutu-wearing hippo, a wise owl with better housing than most millennials, and a frog with the soft, innocent energy of a kid who still believes McDonald's play places are clean. They all taught children how to become decent human beings. And the wildest part? This show was sponsored by a toy company, while sometimes teaching kids that they don't need more stuff to be happy. That's like if Pokemon aired an episode called, Maybe You Don't Have to Catch Them All. Ash would have fainted in the field, because New Zoo Revue was not just adults in animal suits singing songs. No, it was basically Mr. Rogers, Sesame Street, community theater, and a church basement puppetry ministry all thrown into a blender with a 1970s carpet and a flute solo. And somehow, it worked. Today we're exploring the New Zoo Revue. La 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 la. It's the New Zoo Revue, coming right at you, where three delightful animals have fun with what they do. The whole thing started in Whittier, California, inside a toy store, which already sounds like the beginning of either a wholesome kids show or the origin story of a cursed Furby. Barbara Atlas, a toy store owner, had this little beanbag frog named Freddie. She wanted to build a children's show around him. So she asked Doug Momary's mother if she knew anyone creative who could help. And Doug's mom did what every mother does when her child has even one artistic skill. She volunteered him like he was being drafted into Vietnam. Doug was a playwriting major. He was not some network executive sitting in a smoky office saying, "Children crave amphibian-based moral instruction." He was a theater guy. So he went home, wrote the theme song, sketched the sets, created the characters, and basically came back like, "Good news, I made an entire preschool cinematic universe." Most people go home and forget why they walked into the kitchen. Doug went home and invented frog therapy. Then Doug and Emmy Jo, his real-life wife, pitched the idea to Mattel before they even had a full pilot. Imagine that room. A newly married theater couple standing in front of toy executives, singing songs about frogs, feelings, kindness, and emotional maturity. And the executives are just sitting there like Simon Cowell if he worked at Toys R Us. But eventually, they couldn't believe it. The pilot moved forward. And here's the beautiful, insane detail. Doug and Emmy Jo came back from their wedding to make the show. That is either romantic or the reddest creative industry flag imaginable. Congratulations on your marriage. Please report to set. The hippo needs staging direction. They were theater people, so television was a whole new world. They had to learn how to perform for cameras, how to bring stage energy down, and how to talk to children without sounding like a substitute teacher who just discovered caffeine. And then the costumes? Built by the Sid and Marty Krofft people, which explains a lot. Because Sid and Marty Krofft were basically the Willy Wonkas of 70s children's television, except instead of chocolate, they produced puppet-based hallucinations. These are the people whose entire creative philosophy seemed to be, what if children's television looked like a dream you had after eating expired SpaghettiOs? So yes, New Zoo Revue had that bright, strange, slightly surreal, full-body costume look. Freddie the Frog, Henrietta Hippo, Charlie the Owl, not tiny hand puppets, full-bodied characters, big, colorful, emotionally available. Like mascots at Disney World if they had gone to couples counseling and learned conflict resolution. And at the center were Doug and Emmy Jo. Not exactly teachers, not exactly hosts, more like the nicest couple at a 1970s vacation Bible school who somehow lived in a magical courtyard with animal neighbors and never once said, "Why is there an owl in our treehouse?" Which honestly, respect. Because if a talking owl with an elevator starts giving life advice in your backyard, you don't call animal control. You sit down and take notes. Here's where New Zoo Revue gets better than people remember. The lazy description is, "Oh, it was a kids show with animal costumes and songs." Incorrect. That is like describing The Lion King as a movie about a cat who has family issues. Technically true, emotionally useless. The better description is this. New Zoo Revue was a preschool sitcom about moral conflict and how to be a good person. There it is. That's the recontextualization. This was not just a musical kids show. It was a tiny ethics lab with felt, feathers, and more songs than a Disney Channel high school musical movie marathon. Every episode had a problem. Bragging, jealousy, patience, telling the truth, getting along, being kind, eating right, respecting others. Basically, all the things adults still struggle with on Facebook. And instead of treating kids like tiny academic machines who just needed letters and numbers shoveled into their faces, New Zoo Revue focused on relationships. That was the lane. Sesame Street had letters and numbers locked down. Big Bird was out there doing alphabet cardio. Oscar was giving rent-controlled trash can representation. The Count was making math feel vaguely Transylvanian. But New Zoo Revue asked a different question. What if the lesson is not, what number comes after 3? What if the lesson is, how do you stop acting like a little menace when your friend gets a toy and you don't? Important curriculum. Some of us needed it. Some of us still need it. Freddie the Frog was the childlike one. Sweet, impulsive, innocent, with the exact vibe of a kid who would trade a Charizard card for a fruit roll-up and regret it for the rest of his life. Henrietta Hippo was shy, theatrical, gentle, and somehow giving Southern Belle energy while being a hippo in a tutu. A choice. A bold choice. And then there was Charlie the Owl. Charlie looked like a 2-year community college professor who had tenure and a beak. He also lived in a treehouse with an elevator. Let that sink in. This owl had vertical transportation in the 70s. Meanwhile, half of America was watching TV on a wood-paneled set so heavy it required 4 dads, 2 dollies, and a community church prayer chain to move it across the living room. Charlie was the brain. Freddie was the heart. Henrietta was the feelings. Doug and Emmy Jo were the gentle human center holding everybody together like the adults in a 90s TGIF sitcom right before the music turns serious and Uncle Jesse explains accountability. That balance is why the show worked. Kids could see themselves in the characters. Not because they identified biologically with frogs and hippos, although, listen, childhood is weird, I'm not judging. But emotionally, Freddie wanted things. Henrietta got nervous. Charlie got prideful. Everybody had moments where they needed help becoming better, and that was sneaky brilliant. Because the show put emotions outside the child's body, instead of saying, you are being selfish, it could show Freddie struggling with selfishness. Instead of saying, stop bragging, it could let Charlie get a little too impressed with himself. Instead of making a child feel called out like they had just been summoned to the principal's office on Saved by the Bell, the show turned the problem into a story. That is good writing. That is good teaching. That is what Bluey does now, and everybody acts like it was invented in 2018. No. Doug and Emmy Jo were doing emotional intelligence with a frog before most of us could program a VCR. And then came the songs. Doug Momary wrote over 600 songs for this show. 600. That is more songs than you could fit on a lime green iPod mini in 2004. That's almost as many songs as a Taylor Swift era's concert. Every lesson had music baked into it, because songs are how kids remember things before they understand them. You do not explain moral philosophy to a 4-year-old like you're hosting a TED Talk. You sing it. You rhyme it. You put a frog next to it. Memory installed. Frog next to it. Memory installed. That is why theme songs from childhood never leave your brain. You can forget your online banking password, your cousin's birthday, and why you walked into Walmart. But one weird kids show theme from 1987? Locked in forever. Right next to the Reading Rainbow theme, the DuckTales Woo-Oo, and the exact sound of the PlayStation 1 startup screen making you feel like you were entering a sacred digital cathedral. And New Zoo Revue understood that. The music was not decoration. It was the delivery system. The show knew that kids do not separate learning from feeling. They remember the lesson because they remember the room, the carpet, the cereal bowl, the sunlight, the sound of the TV clicking on. The grown-up somewhere nearby doing dishes, folding laundry, or telling you not to sit so close to the screen because apparently every parent in America believed television could cook your eyeballs like a Hot Pocket. The show made kindness feel normal. Not dramatic, not preachy, just normal. And that might be the most radical thing about it, because Doug and Emmy Jo were not parents yet when they started making the show. They were newly married. They were guessing. And what Doug guessed children needed was not louder entertainment, not more commercials, not another plastic thing with a jingle designed to make you beg your parents in the Kmart checkout line.
Make the sun shine. Shrinky-dink. Color in a shrinky-dink, cut out a shrinky-dink. Then Mom bakes it, and right before your eyes, your shrinky-dink shrinks right down to size. Like magic. Fabulous. Fantastic.
You know what? Those do look fantastic. I want a shrinky dink too. He guessed they needed guidance, kindness, patience, a safe place to practice being human. And annoyingly, he was right. Now let's talk tea. And I have to warn you, if you came here hoping for a scandal where Henrietta Hippo threw a chair backstage and Charlie the Owl got arrested outside a Blockbuster, this is not that show. The tea here is not behind the music. It is more like behind the wholesome snack table. But there's one fascinating tension hiding inside New Zoo Revue. Mattel was involved as a sponsor, a toy company, and Doug wanted to make episodes about things like greed, contentment, and being happy with what you already have. Please enjoy the corporate awkwardness of that. That is like if McDonald's sponsored a documentary called Maybe Just Eat a Carrot, or if Nickelodeon aired a special called Slime is Actually Bad for Your Carpet. Doug wanted to tell children, you don't always need more stuff. Mattel, spiritually, was probably sitting there like, love the message. Small note, we sell wanting more stuff. That is an incredible conflict. The sponsor wanted kids to want toys. The creator wanted kids to want character. And somewhere in the middle, a talking owl sang about contentment. That is not scandal. That is better. That is a tiny creative rebellion wrapped in a children's musical. But underneath all that, it still had a soul. It still wanted children to become kinder. And honestly, that makes it feel almost rebellious now. Because we grew up in the decades when every kid show came with a toy aisle attachment. He-Man, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Power Rangers, all sold action figures. Pokemon sold cards, games, toys, lunchboxes, toothbrushes, emotional dependency, and eventually our financial futures. By the 90s, childhood entertainment was basically one long commercial break with a theme song. And listen, we loved it. I am not above it. I would have traded State Secrets for a Super Soaker CPS 2000 and a fresh pack of Pokemon cards. But New Zoo Revue had this strange little moral backbone. It said, yes, this is television. Yes, there are songs. Yes, the hippo is dressed like she's auditioning for community ballet. But also, maybe don't be awful. And there is something beautiful about that. The show, sponsored by a toy company, still had the nerve to tell kids that having enough could be enough. That is the kind of message that sneaks past the guards. It comes dressed as a frog song, and then 40 years later, you realize it was trying to save you from becoming the adult who fights someone on Facebook about local community disputes and unsolicited personal advice. And maybe that is why New Zoo Revue hits harder now than it probably should. Because on paper, this is ridiculous. A frog, a hippo, an owl, a courtyard, songs about manners, adults smiling with the kind of sincerity that modern television would immediately try to undercut with sarcasm. But when you look closer, it is not really about the frog. It is about the feeling of being young enough to believe that adults had time to help you understand yourself, that your little problems mattered, that if you were jealous, or scared, or selfish, or confused, nobody had to shame you for it. They could sing you through it. They could sit beside you. They could explain it gently. A lot of us didn't have perfect childhoods. Some people watching this had homes where things were loud, or tense, or lonely, or just too busy. Some of us didn't look forward to going home after school because home was a dark place. And then here came this strange little show with Doug and Emmy Jo smiling like they had been waiting for you, like the courtyard door was always open. Maybe that's why some fans grew up saying they felt like Doug and Emmy Jo were extra parents. Because sometimes childhood attaches itself to whoever made you feel safe for 22 minutes. A TV show can't raise you, but it can visit, it can give you a song, it can give you a rule for how to treat people, it can give you a frog who messes up and still gets loved. And when you're little, that matters. You don't know yet that time is moving. You don't know that one day the people in those shows will be older, and you will be older, and the living room where you watch them may not even exist anymore. You just know the theme song came on. You know the world felt small enough to understand. And maybe that is why we come back to shows like New Zoo Revue. Not because they were perfect, because they were kind. And kindness, when you receive it young enough, becomes part of the architecture. It stays in the walls. So yes, New Zoo Revue was weird. Of course it was weird. It had a beanbag frog origin story, a hippo in a tutu, an owl with luxury vertical transportation, and enough songs to make High School Musical look like a quiet afternoon at the DMV. But it also understood something beautiful. Kids are not just learning facts. They are learning how to be. And for a little while, Doug, Emmy Jo, Freddie, Henrietta, and Charlie helped a generation practice becoming human. Okay, one more thing. The most important thing. These are the people who joined the Fever Dream Nostalgia community or sent a gift this month, and I need you to understand something about them. Without these people, this show doesn't exist. The research doesn't happen, the scripts don't get written, the hippo doesn't get her moment. These names right here are the reason this show gets remembered. Jim Kallenbach, Jukeset, Rob N, Punkola, Aaron Niren. You are officially part of this show. Your name is now attached to New Zoo Revue, and every show covered going forward. That's yours. Nobody can take it. If you want to join them, and why wouldn't you, hit the link below. Monthly members get the good stuff. Exclusive interviews with these creators who created these shows, bonus videos, a very important introduction to my dogs, custom Fever Dream Nostalgia emojis, and a Nostalgia Club badge that levels up the longer you stick around. Plus your name is in the next video shoutout. You become part of keeping these memories alive. And honestly, these shows deserve someone in their corner. They were there for us when we were little, now we get to be there for them. The link is below, and I will see you next time.